And I would like to invite Maralise so she can help us with the Q&A and guiding the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Evandro. Thank you all of the presenters for such an important presentation. You just show us really important data that all of us needs to take into account in order to, to produce more information and what is really needed in the ground in the field. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in the round of questions. We're gonna read first for Amarilis, then for Elizabeth, and then for Paul. And we invite all the presenters that if you have more questions, this is the moment that you can write it in the chat, because later on we won't have more time for that. So we're going to start agora. A gente vai começar com Amarelis. Amarelis, você tem uma pergunta?
We'll start with Amarelis. Você tem uma pergunta that comes from Robert. She talks, I would like to know how the cumulative impact will have in consideration the indirect impact and the changes in terms of the implication, the lack of energy regarding this analysis. Muito obrigado, Robert. Muitas boas. Very good presentation from our colleagues, and I would like to thank your question regarding the indirect impact of what I mentioned before in a relatively short time, but to show a little bit what we do. One important tool of cumulative impact regarding the impacts that are accumulated in the time and space. So we have like cross-sectional analysis and longitudinal analysis. So we will have aspects that are small impacts that are coming together, that comes multiply in terms of synergic impacts. Some indirect impacts, it was mentioned about the lines of transmission and others such as hydro pathways. So are impacts that are better approached if we have that instrument of strategic environmental impact analysis that will allow us to analyze impacts, even the cumulative or synergic, that will be evaluated with the individual instruments on a process of environmental impact analysis. So sometimes we receive these critics regarding the environmental policies in Brazil, this aspect of the changes on the decision-making process, trying to change the environmental licensing. But to explain that a matter of indirect impacts, we wanted to this aspect to include other planning processes. So we could not wait until those project holders that will conduct the construction of them will conduct the environmental impact, but we have to also include the external or indirect impacts. And we have discussed a lot to use in a systemic manner the instrument of a strategic data analysis. So strategic environmental analysis could have a focus in the sector, considering planning with reports or developing, and that doesn't mean to leave apart the integrated environmental analysis, because we have to strengthen that and give us a space for leader of project to discuss those aspects orientated to the project. So the evaluation of the cumulative impacts is concentrated on the synergic and cumulative impact. And in terms of direct impact, we will have to use other tools to have it put together into the whole analysis strategy.
Thank you.
in the
Thank you,
whole
Mark.
analytic strategy.
Now we are going to Elizabeth Anderson. We have 2 questions for Elizabeth Anderson. And then if we have more time, we're going to go back to the next questions, okay? For Elizabeth Anderson, we have the first question is from Simone. And she said, I have a question for Elizabeth. How have you or plan to translate the knowledge gained through this collaborative research project to decision and policy making? What are main mechanisms and tools that can be used to do that? For example, bridge the science policy gap? Thanks. And the second question is from Renata. And she says, thank you, Elizabeth. Very interesting presentation. I would like to know first if there is any research on those programs that link monitoring information of water and fishes and local knowledge. And if it's possible, a second question, if there are any research in a broader scale that links the impacts of dams in Andean Amazon and lower Amazon in the ecosystems, like the coral reefs in the delta of the Amazon River.
Good. Thank you so much, Marlise. Simone, thank you for your question. The first question about how this information can be, hi Simone, can be translated to decision and policy making. I think from the Rios Vivos initiative, we have this diploma program that is based at the Javeriana University in Bogota, Colombia. And that was kind of the tool or the vehicle for how we would communicate information to people who have decision-making power over water resources particularly, and how they're distributed or how they're managed. The kind of the background of that is that there was a program called Socios para la Conservación de la Amazonía Colombiana a few years ago, where we came up with this diploma model, and we had over 100 people go through it. And it was a way to have people who are scientists, professors, actually teach to people who are actually making decisions about management and allocation of those resources for, in that case, it was for Colombia, but in the case of Rios Vivos Andinos, is for the entire Andean Amazon region. For the other two, the citizen science, Amazon citizen science, and for the freshwater conservation targets, Amazon citizen science, I think that Wildlife Conservation Society has done a lot of like campaigns or like socialización of the information broadly. And for the third one, I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet. I think that one's probably very important. And so, but we're just now getting started on that. And so I think that's something that remains to come later. But thanks for those points. The question from Renata. Thank you, Renata, for your question. Your first part about if there's any research on the programs that link monitoring information of water and fishes and local knowledge. So there's actually, there've been many different publications that have come out, some from the Amazon actually, that there was one paper and that I can share to the organizers here or send it to you, that showed how gathering of local knowledge from expert fishers that were locally identified as the experts was a way to understand better the patterns of fish migrations. I think that was in the Tapajos River. And then the other thing I wanted to say here is that 2 or 3 people actually in my lab right now, Tiago Coutu, Natalia Pyland, and Maria Pulido Velosa, have done a huge analysis of the literature about citizen and community or participatory science initiatives from the Amazon and from other tropical river basins. And so they're looking to find out what's been learned. So I think the answer to your question, really, they will probably have in this review paper that we'll hopefully publish later this year or early next year. So the answer is yes, there is, and we're hoping to also learn from those initiatives. And your second question about if there's any research on a broader scale that links the impacts of dams in the Andean Amazon and the lower Amazon and its ecosystems, I haven't seen, well, I've seen, there's several papers. There's one by Edgardo Latrubesi and his research group that looked at the effects of Andean Amazon dams on sediment They had a type of index that they used. I can't remember how far downstream they went. And there's certainly research that links the sediments that come out of the freshwater plume of the Amazon to Andean origins. How all of this has been put together in a very big story, I think there's still a lot of things that can be done. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. And ahora vamos a pasar para las preguntas para Paul Van Damme. Acá tenemos
We're going to go with the questions for Paul Van Damme. I have a question from Carolina Doria.
Thank you so much, Paolo, for your presentation. Can you leave clear what is the opinion of the tools that could be used to improve aquellos proyectos dos ríos transfronterizos? Transborder
This is
rivers.
related to
¿De qué forma se
what
podría
Robert was speaking about, transborder governance. How can we move forward knowing that at this point the Cacho La Esperanza Dam is under assessment? How can we prepare the communities, or what should we do to give them a voice and work in environmental governance?
Gracias, en español creo, ¿no?
Thank you. I'm going to answer in Spanish. I think that comparing to where we were 20 years ago, we have done a lot of progress. This has three components, and that's an integration component. The components are transporter management on the fisheries, the exchange of information.
De metas comunes. El siguiente nivel es la cooperación.
Seeking common goals. The next level is a research cooperation. Regarding this, we have made a lot of progress. We're working with Carolina, with Miranda. We have a very strong cooperation. I think these cooperations allow us to progress. And the third component are the public stakeholders. If we don't have symmetry among the countries, we are not going to make it any further. So if we manage to make progress in these three components of transporter management, and if we manage to get together stakeholders from different countries, well, we're going to have a more efficient management that goes beyond the small efforts that we have in the past. So I think there's a long way to go, but I think we're on the right track. Thank you very much. We have some other questions. We're going to make an extra round, one question for each one.
I would like to present a question to Amarilis. The question is from Philip Forsyth. He asked, what are the ecosystemic services that PLSP's project analyze in terms of regulation? Thank you so much for your question. And as I mentioned, that is my PhD thesis, and the idea of the project was to show how the evaluation of ecosystemic services could strengthen the process that was implemented, is already used by the planners of hydroelectric system. During the first association, we look for services that had a dialogue with the cumulative impacts up to reaching the scale for the priority services. Specifically speaking, regarding regulation, as you asked, both services of weather regulation, quality of water, quality of air, and flux of water, flow of water, were the ones who were more related to the cumulative impact analysis. And then the analysis of the beneficiaries in the population to identify those priority services and regulations that were part of the water flow and services of regulation of the weather. And at the same level, we put together different ecosystem services as well. And I don't know if I respond to the question clearly, or otherwise I will be here to further clarification. Thank you so much, Amarelis. We will give now a question to Elizabeth. Carolina asks,
thanks for sharing your work. All the three were very interesting. So, thank you, Carolina. Can you expand a little bit on the Migratory Fish Water App project, location where data is being collected, and some preliminary results, as well as opportunities and challenges?
Yes, Carolina, hi. Nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for your question. I think that the migratory fish, the Amazon Citizen Science Project is really an effort of many people. Like Carolina Doria is also very involved in that, and some other people here as well. The locations where data is being collected were based on the partnerships. Originally, they were based on the partnerships between Wildlife Conservation Society and organizations that had active efforts or projects in different parts of the Amazon. And so we started out with roughly 9 sites, but I think that has been expanded. Ones that are examples are Mamidwa has been very, very active. They have numerous records. Puerto Velho, where Carolina Doria has also been very active. In Brazil, Santarém, in that region also there was some collection of information. And then in Peru, Cochacachu, Puerto Bermudez and the Ucayali, around Iquitos, around Nauta. And then now in Colombia and Ecuador, areas in Colombia around Leticia, Puerto Nariño, and then in Ecuador now in the Napo Basin. Bolivia, I'm forgetting Bolivia, sorry, Bolivia. In Bolivia also in the Beni there's been a focal effort. I think that your question about what data is being collected is based on the records in the app of Ictio, but there have been thousands of records already made. Some of the challenges or some of the preliminary results are now being analyzed by Tiago Couto and Sebastian Halpern are leading an effort to try to understand what patterns there are in the data and what we can learn. But I think that our sense is that we're still at a stage where the amount of information is limited to as we accumulate more over time, we'll be able to say more about migratory fishes and their patterns. In terms of opportunities and challenges, one thing that's an opportunity and that's been really interesting is that many of the fishers that have used the app are very curious about what people in other parts of the Amazon catch, and also what they name their fish locally. So what in one place might be called fasaco is Hoplius. I don't know what it's called in Brazil, but I know that's what it's called in Peru. And the fishermen in Peru want to know what it's called in other parts of the Amazon. And so I think that the opportunity to connect people that have similar livelihoods but might not always have opportunity to share or exchange with each other seems to be something like pretty neat and unique about that project. The challenges right now, the COVID pandemic has been really hard for the Amazon, as you all are I'm sure aware. And so a lot of the project has been kind of put on pause in terms of field work. There's still opportunities to connect virtually, but it's not quite the same. So where my lab had anticipated taking multiple trips and working with a lot of different communities throughout this year, we probably won't restart that again until I don't know when, definitely not until 2021 in the middle of that. Other challenges is also getting people to adopt technologies in new ways. There's been a group that's been working on that as well, to like how people use the app and what's easy and what's difficult, and so what we can learn about these conservation technologies from that project. But Carolina, I'm happy to talk more about that with you. I think you have my contact information, and if you'd like to be involved, you're more than welcome. So please do write to me.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you for your for your answer. Really, really important. And now we are gonna go through with Paul Van Damme. He has a question from Caroline too, and she said, "Thank you also for your presentation. You mentioned possibility of the catfish extinction on 2024, which is very concerning. Can you explain on that and explain more about your study leading to the conclusions and what are the recommendations to revert this process?"
Thank you for the question, Carolina. Up until now, the possible extinction, well, Carolina has data, Fabrice has data, they suggest that this species in the confluence of the rivers Beni and Madre de Dios, they have collected the last dorados, so they can investigate if
animales, las madres, digamos, que han podido pasar presas
if they were able to pass the dams a few years ago, or if they are the offsprings of these fish. So the investigation, it's constantly being renewed to show where we are with these species. If this species is not able to reproduce and the offspring cannot survive in Bolivia,
vida en Bolivia, en este caso, la especie se extingue. Como nos
then
tuvieron los
the
datos,
species would be extinct. But if the offsprings that were able to pass the dams before construction can reproduce in Bolivia and end their life cycle, then in that case, the species has a chance of surviving in the Bolivian basin.
Entonces hay todavía muchas preguntas por...
So there's a lot of questions to be answered. And I think cooperation between the groups in Brazil, Peru, and Bolivia, and also France, are essential to provide definitive answers. Let's hope it's soon. Okay, thank you very much. We thank our three presenters. They have presented very relevant information, and if any participant wants to obtain more information, they can write to our presenters. They're gonna be happy to provide information. Now with you, Ivandro.
Muito obrigado, Marlis, pela sua mediação entre perguntas e o
Thank you so much, Marlis, for connecting the questions and the answers of our group. So from this experience that Maria and Elizabeth and Paul Van Damme bring, we have some reports of important research that included the knowledge gaps, decision-making process regarding to Amazon dams projects. That are works that have a research agenda that position important topics regarding the agenda of research and intervention regarding the next studies about this important region. And I would like to thank you again for you, Marilis, Elizabeth, and Paul Van Damme for your presence in this afternoon. I would like to thank you all who were present here with us, people that were involving, presenting some questions, and also Marlis, who was present here, and a special thank of this support to act as a moderator of this fifth panel.